This is the Hunt Quietly podcast. I'm Matt Rinella. I was telling you that the wife was here.
Mm-hmm.
And this weekend, and we went catfishing. And yeah, I was telling you that she made a list of stuff that she thinks I need on my boat. And the reason she came up with that list is because she doesn't like the fish going in the cooler alive.
Okay.
And she definitely doesn't like when we show up back at the house and they're still alive.
So you don't have a live well. They just go right in the cooler.
Yeah.
And a catfish will live forever
Ever.
out of water. Yep.
Yeah. And she might have a point. When I was a little kid, the adults in my life told me that fish don't feel pain. And I internalized that and just took it on faith that I never critically evaluated that when I got older. It's weird, man. All the shit people tell you when you're a little kid.
Oh, yeah. That sticks with you.
And yeah, it does.
Mm-hmm.
It does. But some of it you get over. Like, we don't believe in the Easter Bunny anymore.
No, but
like, I just, you don't feel pain. But who knows? They might be in agony in that cooler.
my father-in-law swears by, so full disclosure, he's got a live well. So the fish are alive, in water. But like when we're ready to head back into like the boat landing, he'll cut them, bleed them, so the fish dies rather quickly. And then, they're bled out and they're, very dead. And then there's pop like the, drain the live well, essentially. That way they're dead, bled out, and, there's none of that suffocating type deal to them, I guess. So,
well, yeah. And that's what on other people's boats we do, and at our cabin in Alaska, every fish gets gilled and bled out. Well, it's supposedly better better eating that way.
Supposedly.
But on my boat, like, I don't fish much on my boat. I generally go fishing when I go get fishing with my friends. It's on their boats because their boats are better set up for fishing.
Sure.
My boat's better set up for hunting. But anyway, so I didn't have a knife of any type. Most of my fishing around town on the Yellowstone is on my friend Miles's boat. He has one knife for gilling. So catch a fish, he gills it, cuts the gills, puts it in the cooler, and lets it bleed. And then when he gets a spare moment, he fillets them out on the river. And so I ain't having any of that shit. And I knew she was going to let me throw them in the cooler. So the first catfish I get becomes, I go to put it in the cooler, but she doesn't say anything. Of course she does.
Of course she does. She's not going to miss that.
And so I flop it down on the deck of the boat. And I take my right foot and I raise it way up in the air and hit it on the head of my foot. Scoots out from underneath my foot and whacks my left foot with the spine on it.
Oh, painful.
Oh, I mean, really. Like, I had to apply some pressure to get it out of my big toe.
I don't know if if you've never been spined by one of the catfish species, whether that be, a channel cat or a, what's one's always got me growing up? Bullheads. Holy cow.
I've heard of bullheads.
Man,
I've heard that they're bad.
Yeah, so many bullheads. Yeah, that's
when I say I've heard they're bad, I've heard people say that they think that the bullhead has a toxin.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've read into it. That's not true.
Okay,
but it does hurt to get shanked by one of those damn things. So
I've thought to myself, What are the chances of that? 10 minutes later, I do it again. Right foot, bam, right in the head. He slips out, and his spine goes into my foot. This time it breaks off in my foot. I didn't realize that until I got home. I took my sock off. There's a little bit of blood in there, and there's a spine hanging out of my foot. And I pull that out, and then it was, I must have lost a pint of blood. It just kept calming.
Sounds like you need a ball peen hammer for knocking fish on the head. You need.
I just need to kill them with a little knife and put them in the cooler.
You need a $15 Rapala.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe a plier for pull spines out of your foot. But
rockfish do have a venom in their spine.
Okay, well, that'll be fun to figure out at some point.
So when I've gotten hit at our cabin by a rockfish, I got to take an hour pain break.
Oof.
You go on a pain odyssey where there's nothing but this, that you can't just go about your day. It hurts too bad to go about your day.
So you're telling me that if I come up there with you, that me and you will handle the rockfish, my kids are not allowed to handle them?
Yes, that would be smart.
Okay.
Be smart.
Just because I don't need to deal with that.
That would be wise.
That's a pro dad tip right there, folks.
Do you know what what are those fish? I'm gonna have to stop this thing because now I can't think of it. Yeah, lionfish. Lionfish are a rockfish.
Really? Well, I suppose they have that shape, don't they? That makes sense.
And they have a nasty venom.
I think I've heard something about. I've also heard they're really good to eat though. Like
they are.
Like restaurants will buy those from dudes that'll come in with like a boatload.
Yeah.
There's no bag limits or anything. They're just get rid of them type deal. So
yeah, my brother Steve got whacked by one of them in the Bahamas when we were spearfishing one time, and it was 4 hours before he could do anything. He just was basically curled up in a ball.
Yikes. That sounds painful.
Yeah, I can't tell because, I mean, we should, you've looked into catfish. There's not a venom. It's just the puncture wound that hurts.
It's just the puncture wound that hurts. And I've talked to people, I don't know, I'll Google it right now, but I talked to some fish guys and they said there wasn't. I took it at their word. Maybe I need to actually look into it. So.
I'll pause again.
Okay. All right. So the answer is yes and no. Some do have venomous spines and some don't.
What about channel cat?
There's like 1,600 species of catfish.
All right. Look up channel cat.
So let's see here. Well, let's see. So there's 1,600 species that do possess venom glands. All right, so we're gonna see if channel cats do,
because the reason that's what we fish for here. Plus, with these 2 puncture wounds I got last weekend, it felt to me very much as though something was going on that couldn't be explained merely by a puncture wound.
Okay, so yes, AI is telling me channel catfish have venom that is delivered through sharp spines on their dorsal and pectoral fins, cause pain, injury. So. I mean, I've been stung by those. I've been stung by stone cats. I've been stung by, the bullheads. I think we got black bullheads or yellow bullheads over there. I don't know. But I think it probably got to get you in the right spot for it to be really dangerous, I guess. But yeah, it hurts like hell.
Oh, when I say, I don't know if they're ever dangerous, maybe, but I just know that it hurts like hell.
Yep.
And I mean, those are the first 2 times I've ever really gotten whacked by a catfish. And to me, it felt like, let's say it had been a similarly shaped object.
Like a 16-penny nail or something.
Well, no, I mean a sharp object.
A nail, yeah.
Oh, a nail. Oh my God. Yes. I'm sorry, Adam. I'm sorry. Yeah, if it had been, I don't feel, and you had made the same wound, I don't feel like it would have hurt as bad.
I don't know. I'm not gonna try it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that back to back. I'm sorry.
I wonder if they've isolated the venom.
They must have if they know that there's venom in them.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah. Either that or they did the experiment we're talking about.
Right?
I'm gonna make a puncture wound that's a 1/4 inch deep,
Mm.
a 1/16 of an inch wide, with a spine and with a nail.
You tell me which one hurts worse.
The calf or spine.
You could
We
pick.
don't know.
You pick the
It's a
spine.
venom.
Here's your $5 college freshman coupon for a sandwich or some shit.
They call it a bioassay.
Yep.
When you determine something by a biological response, you know,
Yep.
they call it a bioassay.
I don't know. I'm not signing up for that one.
So this is the strangest topic that we could possibly endeavor to address on this podcast, because we're going to talk about advocacy, how you go about generating positive change by advocating for something. And the reason it's odd is because we are involved in an advocacy movement that's been an abject failure.
I wouldn't say that. I think we're gaining traction, but that's amongst the people, not necessarily amongst government. So
Okay, so the focus is on the Adam's done some research, folks, on how you make change through the through advocacy at the legislative level or amongst politicians.
Mhm.
And so, okay, that's what we're going to be talking. We're not going to be talking about changing hearts and minds in society as much as we're going to be talking about changing hearts and minds in the political system.
Yep.
Okay.
So that starts in society, but this is how you go next level with it. So, we do apologize. This isn't topical for like the specific state bills, like some folks asked us to do about Montana and so on and so forth. Again,
The reason we never did that is because we just never took the time that it would take to.
Well, I mean, we tried, right? Me and you tried one. We weren't happy with our product because it led to more questions than answers.
Right.
You know, so we tried to get some more knowledgeable people on the podcast, and we got shot down. Like,
There's only been, so I just had Eric Nyland on. He used to be a staffer for Senator Tester.
okay,
And he's pretty immersed these days in what he's engaged in the legislative process in Helena. The legislative session just ended.
yep. So
But, even with him, I couldn't get my head around the bills he was talking about. There's only been one guy I've ever had on that could lay it out in a way that you could understand, and that was Kevin Farron. He used to be the employee for Montana BHA.
okay, and I know you guys are gonna find this easy to believe, but a lot of time those bills are written to be confusing.
Oh, okay. That makes sense to me. So I never thought about that before. I just thought they were written by dumb people. Because, like, when I see not easy to understand, something that's not easy to understand, I assume one of two things: that it truly is a difficult topic, or that it was written by a dumb person.
If it's written by a dumb person, it's gonna read as slop. Like, if it's written like, this is hard to understand, what's this word mean? Why do they keep using the word shall and instead of must and so on, all these things? That means it's written in legalese, and it was by an attorney that is paid for by somebody with an agenda. That'd be the best way I can explain it. At least that's my take on it. You know, obviously there's caveats and nuance to all of this, but you'll see it all the time. Things are written to be confusing, to muddy the issues.
That is so disheartening because to me, in any other domain, when you put pen to paper,
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to explain something to someone.
Right. You want clarity.
Clarity.
Yeah.
So, okay. I didn't know that because I'll read the language of a bill and I'll be like, don't understand it.
Mm-hmm. And
I never thought that was intentional.
it depends on the issue, it'd be, especially like, I don't know about you, but like, I like black and white laws. For instance, like say, this is just an example, like baiting. You can bait or you cannot bait. Okay.
Yes.
Black and white. But if the baiting gets into, well, you can only put out a 5-gallon bucket per day and you can only do it 3 times a week, so on and so forth. And like, okay, how does the game warden measure that? Do they scoop it all up, put it in the bucket? What if a coyote chases the deer off the night before and I come back 2 days later and the 5-gallon bucket is still there? I have a 5-gallon bucket with me and it just gets to be ridiculous rather than having black and white.
Good example.
You know what I mean? Regardless of how you feel about baiting, I'd much rather have either yes, you can bait or no, you can bait rather than you can only use this amount and for this time period. It's like, it just gets to be ridiculous,
Yeah.
So, and I have no opinion about baiting whatsoever, but that's
right.
The black and white laws are just much easier to follow.
Yeah.
So, so that just, so this does kind of segue and, like those, like I said, those state law or issues, almost all legislators or legislative sessions in the nation, like over 50%, 75% are meet in the spring of the year from like January to April. Right. Like, bunches of them do.
Okay.
So this isn't necessarily like a lot of those bills are done and over with. I'm sorry. But they're not necessarily topical anymore. But that does segue into something, how to be a good advocate. Which is always topical.
Right. So this is interesting because I've seen a lot. I've had a lot of people send me things recently about bills and various legislatures in other states while our legislative session is going on here in Montana. I never put it together that the state legislative sessions happen about at the same time.
Ours is wrapping up. North Dakota's wrapping up here very soon. Your guys is wrapping up. A lot of these states, they wrap up about this time.
Do they tend to be biennial like ours?
A lot of the smaller population states are, so they're not always in session. Some states, they're essentially always in session. Like,
really?
Yeah, like I think California is one of the ones that's always in session. New York, always in session. There's a continuing rolling bills, but like
like the federal government.
Yeah, but like my state, your state, smaller population, they only meet every other year, set budgets for 2 years, so on and so forth. Yeah. So like things get hot every other year, or like you get stuff like, what is with this bill? So
I said like the federal government, but they even take breaks.
Yep, they take breaks. So some of you expressed concern that we have been front and center about these issues, specifically public land sales and transfers. And here I'm gonna apologize a bit for that. But I will say that's never been our biggest focus at HFA, right?
Or HQ.
Or HQ. Quietly. Never been our biggest focus, but yes, we are concerned. That's why we're bringing this up.
I think that if once there's concrete, here's the thing so far, Adam, in my mind, we're hearing that the Department of Interior and the USDA, that there's talk about selling off, divesting from certain federal lands. But it's very difficult to advocate against that when there's not concrete proposals involving specific pieces of land.
Right.
So even though we have next to no platform, I think once there's concrete proposals, we shouldn't just leave it to the big guys, to the TRCPs and the meteors. I think that we probably should do our part.
Yeah, and to be clear, we will be on. We've been very critical of some of the meat eater and so on and so forth, but on this one, we're on the same side.
Right.
Absolutely. So
I think that like the way we could put a hunt quietly spin on advocating to keep public lands in public hands would be by calling out people and organizations and companies with big platforms that are
right.
advocating when the time comes.
Yeah, I need you guys to shift your focus a little bit.
Yeah.
We don't take shift a little bit away from R3 and selling shit to here's how to be a pain in the ass to your senator.
Right. What did Sitka cover on Instagram the week that there was the 20,000 acres of Forest Service land got auctioned off or whatever?
Well, and I should mention, these are different agencies. Like USDA manages Forest Service is under the USDA.
Right.
BLM lands are under the Department of Interior. We're going to touch a little bit on the Department of Interior. So you also need to know, like, all these are treated differently, in the eyes of the federal government. And, do your research on that and who is controlling what. You talk to the Department of Interior about BLM land, they're going to say, not our problem. Right? That's not what.
No, that is.
Excuse me. If you talk to the USDA about BLM land, Bureau of Land Management land, they're going to say that's not what we do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, BLM land tends to be grasslands, bad land.
Yeah, it's usually the more rugged shit.
And then Forest Service lands, there's mountains.
Mountains, but also grasslands. They also have some grasslands. So but yeah, know who owns it. So, so you did mention that a lot of that has not they don't have concrete plans yet. That is starting to come into focus a little bit more a few days ago. So this podcast is dated on the 29th of April. About late last week, there was a leak from the Department of Interior about some of their plans that they want to say for those lands specifically, and I think it was specifically Wyoming and so on. But some people are reading it as like a wish list for some, like it's almost written by like industry people is what they think it is.
Okay.
So a lot of it's pretty ugly. I would definitely look into it. We could throw a link on our Instagram or what have you. And
just for your sake, as you go through this, now that I see where we're going with this, I'm going to put this out in the next few days.
Okay. Even
though that I have 6 episodes ahead of it, because it sounds like it's somewhat time sensitive.
Well, it's started to become clearer, and this is still going to be a fight, but we're starting to get the big picture here of what the idea is. So, the Department of Interior is really upset that this leaked and was published. So, unfortunately, when that happens, when they make a big deal about it, that usually means it's pretty darn close to what they want.
Okay, right.
Because they're reacting to it. If they just been like, we don't know what you're talking about, that generally means that was probably not real. But since they're upset, that's probably pretty close to what they're looking for. So, but yeah, we're gathering the same rate. We're gathering info at the same rate you are, folks. Experiencing a lot of the same whiplash. Like you said, it changes every damn day, it seems to be. And yeah, it sucks. This isn't fun. It really sucks that we have to take on this fight now, too, when we're trying to fight all the other stuff. The only people talking about this other attack from a different angle on hunting. So, not fun, but this is the nitty gritty. So how do you advocate? We're going to back up a little bit here. We're going to start at the state level, right? So, okay. So like we said, most states don't have a year-round legislative session like North Dakota and Montana. So a lot of them start their session in January, give or take. It runs through spring sometime, whether that be May or April, so on and so forth. So if you want to get a bill on the docket, let's say you want to get something discussed, right? and I have done this before. I've got a bill related to my business. Like I talked to my local senator and request a meeting with your representative for a sit down talk in summer in like September, October-ish before that legislative session. So ours is biennial, right? So that means every other year. So it does me no good to really start working on a bill for next session right now. It's going to be forgotten about. It's not going to,
Yeah.
they're not going to, that's going to push to the back burner. So approach them at the right time also makes it. So, okay.
So there's a bit of just to be clear, with the federal stuff, it seems like you want to approach your federal congressman.
Yep. So, and I said they're in year round. We're gonna get to that. Okay. So if you're going to try to get a bill passed at that state level, come prepared with a specific issue, right? Why it's an issue. Be well informed because they're going to ask you, and they're going to ask for data, right? Like, show me that this is a problem. How many people does this affect, right? Because they want to know that. Because I've seen people like come to the session with a bill that was literally written for one person near a boat ramp. He didn't like the loud boat ramp and wanted to get the boat ramp shut down at specific times. Literally written for one person and then never made it out of any, like no discussion, no nothing. Like we're not doing this. Ridiculous.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So
unless you have deep pockets, why would they care?
Why would they care? Right?
Unless you're going to give several million to their campaign.
Right. Yeah, and it's no fun, right? But be prepared to make your pitch. Like this is intimidating, right? These are lawmakers. They got 20 other people asking them to make a bill. But that's why you got to lead best foot forward and make your pitch of why it's important. Okay, so a lot of that's obvious, but we're starting the basics here, right? So their job is to represent. So be persistent, right? Don't let them blow you off, But especially like this time of year, like obviously you can't bring a new bill. Like there's dates for that, So. But by the time the session is done, like they're sick of their constituents. They're sick of seeing other senators that they've been stuck in a room in for, 4 months now. They're sick of talking to everybody. Like they don't want to talk to you, So now's not the time, right? Because there's nothing that can be done right now anyway. So, they may know your idea, even if that is a long shot. Like the bill that I had brought for my work, I knew it was a long shot. Unlikely. I was asking for additional regulation on a business, which is my own business, which was something nobody ever asked for in the state that does not like regulation. Highly unlikely.
North Dakota, this is.
Highly. Strangely enough, I got it passed through one side. I got it passed to the House. And then, passed to the Senate and then shot down in the House.
Oh,
that was fairly successful.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. So, but you know what? Raise that issue anyway. Get that discussion going. Okay. So you get that that representative or state senator on your side. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to take it to their state attorneys, right? The people they have access to, and they're going to start doing that legalese stuff, right? Hopefully written in a way that people can understand. If it's a straightforward issue, if it's contentious, that's usually when it gets confusing, right? Okay. So they're going to make sure it's legally written, and then they're also going to seek out co-sponsors for the bill. So you can help with that. So like you might, people that you have likewise interests, that people that like, hey, I need you to talk to your senator in the next town over that's got a different representative. Let's get them teamed up with my representative. And, the more co-sponsors you can get to a bill, the better shot you got, right? Mm-hmm. You go into it you've already got 10 people that are lawmakers signed on to your bill. That's a hell of a good start. You got 10 votes right there. If you have 40 people in one side of your house, you already got 25% of the votes you need,
Okay.
Like hell yeah, you're off to a hell of a good start. So, a couple things you need to keep in mind at this level is there's a day that's the deadline for new bill submittal. That's usually at about a month or so into the session, right? So make sure if they're dragging their feet of getting something written, get on them. We need to get this done, right? Next one is the hearing date. So I'm assuming it's mostly like this in most states, but every bill gets brought before a hearing before it goes to the general assembly, right? So there's going to be a committee, usually 5-6 people, maybe a dozen, what have you, and you're presented there, right?
And this is both in the state house and the state senate?
Yep, it usually goes to both sides. Okay. So
you can bring a potential piece of legislation to either the house or the senate.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times there's matching bills. And then, like they're it might be slightly different wording, that'll see kind of what plays better on one side or the other, get some discussion.
Oh, and then they get melded together.
Yeah, then oftentimes they'll get melded together, or one will get discarded for the other.
Okay.
So and good point. We're going to get to that in just a moment, right? So the hearing date, this is the day where you, after you've made your pitch to your senator or congressman, now you get to bring it to that committee, right? This is where you get to give your impassioned speech about why what you're talking about is important, right? Because you're probably going to have people in the room that are going to be talking against you, right? There's a good chance they're going to say something that pisses you off. Mm-hmm. You can certainly be passionate about it, but be professional, be strong with your words, but let them know that you care, why you care. This is the issue, right? And again, facts, and stuff that can be verified. They're going to ask you tough questions, right? But this is where you get to, get your point across.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So I'm just thinking maybe to make this a little bit more concrete, I would, give a hypothetical. Let's say I wanted to propose some legislation to ban outfitting on private lands in Montana.
Okay.
Which would be an awesome thing.
Okay.
If that went away. So then I convinced some senator, congressman to take that on. I convinced him it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we write a bill.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He gets his lawyer involved and they write a bill. And then I'm the one that's going to I'm imagining multiple people speak on behalf of the proposed legislation.
Mm-hmm.
So in the meantime, while this is all going on, it gets publicized, right? Like that there's going to be this hearing and here's the bill.
Right.
So the people are speaking against it at the hearing. They're going to be like, oh, wait a minute, there's this bill. In this case, it's going to be the outfitter association.
Yep.
Right. And they'll get a chance to speak.
Absolutely. They're going to get a chance to speak. And in that case, what they're going to come at you with is this is going to cost Montana this amount of money in tourism, in this amount of jobs, so on and so forth. That's how they're going to attack it.
Right.
Because they're going to say, this is going to cost us money. This is what we're losing by doing this.
Yeah.
So you need to say, this is what we're losing by having these people do this. This is how many more people you're affecting by letting them do this.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
You got to head that off.
Okay.
Okay. So, and in this, these hearings are powerful, right? I've gone and spoken at some of these. I've killed a bill in hearing for another one. Like they mentioned my name in a discussion on it later.
Oh, what was that bill?
Totally unrelated.
Okay,
I'm not going to bring it up here.
Work related.
This wasn't work related. This was just an issue brought before the state of North Dakota, and I said, "This is where you guys are making a mistake. These are the repercussions for it. I don't think you guys have thought of this." And they all just kind of, and I killed that bill in the hearing.
Damn, you're an operator. That's awesome.
That's right. Okay, so the crossover date. If you have a 2-house session, like if you have a house and like a Senate side, some states don't. I think Nebraska only has one. Yeah.
Oh.
Right. So there's a crossover date. That's where all the bills that were passed on this side go over to the Senate or go over this side. They debate them again, right, and then get passed or killed there, and so and they might have to go back if they have a reconciliation or something like that, or if they both get passed and there's no amendments or anything like that, then it goes to the governor for signature.
Okay.
Right. So, and another day to keep in mind is the last day to file amendments to the bill. Like sometimes, and this is a tricky one to pay attention to, right? Because a lot of times if they get a bill and they know it's contentious or something like that, or if they think they're going to lose, they'll try and tack an amendment onto it that's not popular in an attempt to kill it.
Okay.
Right? There's some gamesmanship here.
Okay.
Okay. So, and I'll say one other thing about...
That's interesting. We got to make this bill less attractive.
Yep.
It's going to pass.
Yep, absolutely.
Whoa. So...
Dude, this gets like really like... like it gets gross, it gets messy, it gets...
Yeah.
You scratch my back. I mean, it is like, it's a club and you might not be in it.
Yeah.
You might not even realizing how badly you're getting fucked without being in the room.
Yeah.
Okay, so... that one that I mentioned, to be very wary of the final day to submit new bills. If it's something contentious, that's something that they know it's not going to be super popular, people are going to be upset about it, they'll hold off on submitting that
to the
last minute, right? So the opposition has less time to get that language in front of them and know how to build something against it, right? So yeah, it's just there's a lot of trickery with that, but I'm a guy that pays attention to this shit because
yeah,
right. So but the good things, right? All these bills are required to be posted to the general public, right? The language of the bill, so on and so forth. Oftentimes there'll be fiscal notes attached to it, which if it's going to cost the state money. So like whoever agency with the state, like say it's the Department of Health that's got to administer this bill, they got to come up with a fiscal note, which means this is going to cost us this much to administer or regulate or whatever this bill is.
Institute the law.
Institute the law, right? Okay, so state websites, I think it seems like every state website got the same like 8th grade height or like middle school class to design their website. They're all really clumsy, it seems to be. But it will be posted, categorized. So what I do is oftentimes they're just tabs, and I will go through the bills and I'll look for the hunting and access tab, fishing tab, wildlife tab, something like that. And I'll just read the quick description of that bill or the heading of that bill and see if this interests me or does it not, type deal, So a lot of bills are just, you go through and you're like, oh my God, there's 100 wildlife bills here. What are they trying to do? A lot of those are just housekeeping type stuff. They're cleaning up language.
Okay.
So focus on certain ones.
Okay.
Look at them all, but like a lot of them are just, it's really just cleaning up language in the law.
Yeah.
So that is the bulk of them.
I guess, that's where there's groups that are pretty beneficial because they'll have like BHA, as much as I give them shit, they have people that look at all that stuff, find the ones that you should pay attention. They
have specific policy people, that are talking about that. They're lobbyists, and I commend them for that. And they keep their people informed, and I appreciate that. There's been times where they didn't bring up an issue or didn't take sides on an issue that did upset me, but it is what it is, man. It's I'm not inside the inner circle, so
yeah. But you can imagine, like, if it's something that's going to negatively impact access. There's going to be a handful of organizations that you can trust are going to make noise about it.
Yep. Yeah, and there's some people like TRCP. I put faith in them for that type of thing. Yeah. BHA, I know they're going to get out there. They're going to get their email blasts out. They're going to be online about it, and I'm going to hear about it. So that type of thing, I appreciate it. Thank you. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
Stay on top of it. So, all right. So from my talks with state legislators and lobbyists, and yes, I do know some lobbyists, there's nothing at the state level that's more contentious than hunting and wildlife bills.
Really?
Nothing. It's the most
Okay,
fought
in
over
states like yours and mine.
Yeah, there's nothing that's fought over
Okay.
like these, right?
Right. If we were in California or New York, we wouldn't say this. But
Yeah, I don't know, right? So the idea is people tend to be very passionate about hunting and fishing.
sure,
They
there's
care.
entire forums like Rock Slide
Yeah.
and Reddit forums
Right?
and podcasts and Instagram and Facebook pages devoted to people spouting their opinions and this podcast.
Right.
You know, so yes, to me that in itself is so fascinating that it just there's so many strong opinions.
So
more so than like with basketball or
Right.
any sport for that matter. Maybe it's because the rules are so clear.
maybe.
I don't know. Like,
So
well, the rules are clear with hunting, but or that like it's not under threat. The quality of your experience is not under threat. You're like, it's time to go play basketball.
Right.
Court.
Yeah, there's always a hoop there's always a court to find. There's not always a spot to find for hunting.
Yes.
So
anyway,
so
taking you off.
So every one of these bills prior to the hearing that I mentioned to, right? You can submit public testimony, right? This is a Word, essentially a print document, a Word document onto their website, right? And you can, generally speaking, submit testimony in favor, in opposition, or neutral. This is you want to put information there that you want them to consider, right? Keep in mind that all that is public information. People will have your name attached to it. They'll be able to see what you wrote, right? But and oftentimes these bills will have, the baiting bill is the big one in North Dakota this year. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters of testimony, right?
Wait, so are they trying to outlaw baiting?
For private lands.
Okay.
Yeah. So
is it outlawed already for public land?
Yeah, for wildlife management areas, for state-owned lands, and I think federal lands too. You can't bait there, but
did that get through?
It did get through.
So there's no more baiting in North Dakota.
No. They reversed it, where the game and fish.
Now you can bait on private land again.
So this was basically a CWD thing, where the state is trying to limit the spread of CWD by limiting deer specifically, so we don't have a lot of elk. Getting that super close contact on a bait pile. I'm not going to get deep into this.
So they outlawed baiting on private land
so the game and fish
slow the spread, but then they reversed it.
Then the legislature reversed it.
How long was it in effect? The ban on the public land baiting, private land baiting?
Not long.
A year.
Shoot. When did our first CWD case came about? Maybe a decade ago. And they slow walked it. They just they'd say no baiting in that unit that they found, right? And then they attached to a unit, the adjoining units.
Okay, so just kind of
right. So we still don't have a lot of CWD in North Dakota. I'm worried that that's not going to be the case going forward because we've seen this happen, but. That is what it is. So that's it, done and over with. I'm not going to get deep into that. So, so being respectful and thoughtful is the best way to get what you want here. They do want to hear from you.
Based on what are you saying that?
So if you go in there,
our commander-in-chief right now is anything but.
Yep.
He's
the
king of the country.
Okay, so he's in a different position though, right? And he's not a king. God damn it.
Well, he's the most powerful person.
All right. So
and he got there not by being
okay. So what the difference is these people are not used to being talked to disrespectfully.
Okay.
Right. So
some of them,
right?
Like our guy here, my House representative here used to be my welder.
Okay.
So you imagine.
So he's got a bit of cuss in him.
Well, he's been disrespected.
Sure.
Plenty over the years, But yeah, sure. Some of these guys, or maybe you just very quickly, if you become a legislator, think, okay, from now on, people are going to treat me with respect.
Maybe, but so anyway, so you can commit, like I said, you can submit written testimony. The best way is go to the actual hearing, make your case in person, right? Okay. So it often takes...
It's always better to be
respectful. Always start there. You can always be a dick later. But if you start out with being a dick, it's hard to come back from that, right? So, it often takes multiple sessions. That's mean multiple legislative sessions to get a bill through. Oftentimes it'll be reworded several times, right?
So every 2 years you're bringing the same thing up.
So the big example in North Dakota is the presumption of access law, like our trespass law in North Dakota.
Right.
For years, if it wasn't posted, it was free. It was access for people, right? So you had a presumption of access, which is unlike, I think, like 46 other states, right? So landowner groups came forth 10 times, right? That is 20 years running where they try to get that reversed, where the presumption of access, it is posted unless otherwise, right? So that's how long they continued to fight for that. So that's what I mean by oftentimes they'll keep coming back until they get the support they want.
Okay.
Just to say how, so they were persistent, right? So a no vote this year doesn't necessarily mean that it won't get the next year, right?
Okay.
You know what I mean? So, but remember, it's the same with bad bills, like things you don't want. Now, a lot of times with bad bills is they never seem to die, and it's always the same assholes bringing them back year after year after year.
Well, one guy's bad bill is another guy's good bill.
You're right, but like, you're right. It's perspective.
Yeah.
But that it just oftentimes it keeps coming back. So in fact, if you pay attention to the co-sponsors and such, you'll always find the same people are attached to the worst stuff. It seemed to be.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Assholes flock together.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
So keep some of that in mind. Now, we're gonna switch gears. We're going to the federal stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So
this is the more pressing
right now, right? So the federal stuff is a whole different ballgame. Okay. Bills tend to come from lobbying groups rather than, you have a personal grievance type deal, right? So, or they come from people with just obscenely deep pockets. Okay. People probably aren't listening to this particular podcast, right? So they don't come directly from citizens. This process is generally way more drawn out, with the sessions being year round and specific bills often taking years to pass. They'll talk about this for, depending on what it is, months, years, it takes forever. So if you're listening to this, there's a high probability that you're not a lobbyist, nor have enough money to buy yourself a senator or a representative. So how do you get change at the federal level?
Okay.
Right? You need to be a pain in the ass. All right? So we're going to talk you through this. A lot of them saying next is kind of regurgitation from some online sources that I follow. People I've listened to, a lot of these people were like, like worked in like senators' offices and stuff like that. Aides, stuff like that. So they know some of the inner workings here, right?
Yep.
So first and foremost, it takes persistence and often pretty direct action. So we're gonna go through this, okay? First, singular emails get very little attention. Okay, you can log on the website, find your senator, shoot them an email. Doesn't usually get a lot. Okay?
The only thing worse is a mass email from the.
Yep. Well, hold on here. So they get thousands of emails a day. So those basically amount to like a tally mark, right? Okay. So a staffer compiles and sorts, marks it down, and shock out a canned response. Right?
Okay.
The canned responses that organizations that you sign up for, like BHA, okay, where you put in your name and stuff and they send an email on your behalf, these can add up, right? But the repetition makes them easy for staffers to sort out. Often they interpret them as kind of lazy, okay, because you didn't put any thought into it. It takes so little effort on your part to do it, so they think they don't care all that much. But they can add up, right? If they get, 10,000 people all saying the same thing, and it's they can add up, right? But they're easy to sort out and ignore.
Yeah.
So that's what. So that especially when like BHA does that, they're counting on the entirety of their membership to send that email.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's like it's accuracy through volume. A lot of shooting is what they're hoping for. Okay. So the next best thing after that is a phone call, right? And lots of them, right? Call their office, call their local office, call their DC office, right? And this is what I mean by being a pain in the ass. Okay. Lantani has quoted some of his congressional staffers that
Lantani is the former CEO
Yep.
of Backcountry Yard.
Yep, and he said this before. So if they get 10 phone calls a day on a singular topic, they consider themselves overwhelmed on that topic.
Oh,
right? So that's really not a whole lot.
that's not.
But that's when they start to like, whoa, this is an issue. Okay. So it ties up their staffers, right? These people having to answer phones, and it's far more likely to gain a positive response of what you're looking for, right?
Okay.
Because it lets them know. So when you call these folks, okay, give them your name, let them know that you are a voter in their district. Okay. Give them a zip code, generally speaking. Okay. And even if they don't ask for it, say, I'm Adam, I'm from Bismarck, I live in North Dakota, I'm a voter here, so on and so forth. Okay. And so they know that you're not, if you're trying to talk to your North Dakota senator, they're not getting somebody from Massachusetts that they don't have to please.
Listen up, folks. This is if there comes the day, God forbid, there's concrete proposals to divest certain lands, and you don't want that to happen.
Right.
Adam's laying out what you do.
Right. Now, yeah, you can call your next state over and so forth, but it just carries less weight.
Well, yeah, just focus on your own.
You'll hammer your way.
I am eligible to vote for you next time around, and in a lot of cases, I voted for you last.
Right. So call daily and don't let up. Like, be a pain in the ass.
Okay.
That's right. So after that, right, your next best thing is an actual personal meet with a staffer or if the congressman yourself, if you can get it. So in North Dakota, like Senator Kramer, he's actually pretty approachable. He'll take, you can actually get a meeting with him fairly easily.
Oh,
not always the case, sure. Depending on what state you're in, but it can be done. So these town halls that you've probably seen or heard about right now, they can be great for making a point, but they usually lead to a lot of anger, a lot of shouting. They just ends up usually being a fight rather than a discussion or exchange of ideas. So a lot of times the productivity of town hall is simply they're just not much there for productivity oftentimes. Yeah. They often turn into a bitch session, right? Or the town hall just becomes scripted. Like they only take canned questions from people that they know are going to throw them a softball, type deal. And they don't allow for dissent because they don't want to give people that little nugget, that little viral moment or whatever like that.
Yeah.
And they'll only take questions that they know they're going to get and they know they have an answer to. There's a lot of game, like I said, there's gamesmanship to that. So that being said, it's good to let them know you're pissed, right? Like, anger leads people to the polls to vote, right? More than being happy, more than contentment, being angry makes people vote.
Yeah.
Okay, so they pay attention to that, people that are angry, even if they'll call people paid protesters or whatever. They're always going to try and downplay that, okay, if they're on the other side of it. All that, it's really not that big a deal. Those people were paid to be there, so on and so forth. Generally speaking, it's a lie because you feel the same way. You're angry. You want to yell at them. It makes sense that these people also want to yell at them.
Yeah.
But that's how they try and downplay that. Okay?
Okay.
So, but make no mistake, they do take it into consideration, especially, we'll get back to, I'll come back to that part. But if you can get a meeting, a personal meeting, right? Again, same thing like I said when you're going to speak in those hearings. Stay calm, collected, come on a specific topic, the problems being caused, and a solution if you have one, right? They really appreciate that.
Yeah.
If it just turns into you just bitching, you're easy to dismiss.
Right.
Right? Because
if you have a concrete action that they can take that ameliorates the situation, makes society better, and makes them more attractive as a leader, then they're going to be more apt to
absolutely
pay attention. Yeah.
Right. So last for actually we have protests, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is where if you go to your and this goes to your local representatives too, right? You can use this, right? If you can get a dozen people or more, hundreds if you can, if you have that poll, people that can show up to a specific spot with a specific goal in mind, something that like you can get a call to like local media to come cover, right? Where a video will go viral or something like that. That's real power.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. That is real power. That is something if you were a community organizer that can pull that many people together for a specific issue like that, that's power.
How does that manifest itself in the political process?
Well, we're going to get to that, right? Because it's something they can't ignore, right? That's a voting block.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Okay, they're representative of voting block. If you have 100 people show up to a protest saying about this piece of land that's going to get sold and we're pissed about it, they probably figure something about 10x amount of people care about that, right? So
each protester is representing 10.
Yep, and they have numbers for this. They don't share a lot of it, but make it a specific issue. Right? Don't let it become a bitch session. We are against this specific thing, something they can take action on. Okay? And demand action on that. Okay? This is how we want to see you vote. If you don't vote this way, we're going to make some changes. Okay? So let's get to that. So let's say after all this, they still don't want to listen to you. Okay? Remember what I said? Often it's the same assholes over and over and over again. Okay? It's because they feel safe. Okay? They feel they're likely in a safe voting districts where they know they're not going to get unseated by the opposition party.
Okay.
Like a deeply red state, whatever, they're not going to get unseated by a Democrat.
They feel smug.
They might be smug about it, but they know that they're not going to lose in a general election. Yeah. Okay? Right? So, but this is where you threaten to primary those people. Right? Okay, so say a Republican, he knows he's never going to lose to a Democrat or vice versa, I don't care, but someone from their own party is much more likely to unseat them.
Yeah.
That's just as bad. They still lose their job. They still lose their power, okay? So let them know you, your friends, your family are going to support their primary opponent. Right? You are going to donate to them. You're going to volunteer for that other person's campaign. You're going to door knock for that person. Yeah. Right? And then that's actually the kind of thing that sends chills down their spine. That they're going to lose power. Okay? They hate that. Okay? So follow through. Right? Let them, you see this ugly mug, get used to seeing this ugly mug. Because I'm fighting for the guy that's on your job. Okay. All right. So that's kind of, the gist of it. Right. So, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It's time to fight like hell for this.
Yeah.
Right. If you're listening to the podcast, you're probably just an average person on the street. You likely don't have deep pockets. I've already covered that. Have you ever had an idea that made public land or had the idea that maybe public land sales or transfers won't be so bad? You'll just buy one of those pieces, like your favorite piece that you hunted on. I'm here to tell you you're kidding yourself. Okay? That you're not going to outbid the Wilkes brothers. You're not going to outbid the Koch brothers or Peter Thiel or even Mel Gibson or Leonardo DiCaprio or even the Chinese or whatever other asshole that wants to get a hold of these public lands.
Not that the Chinese are assholes.
Well, whatever. The point is, right?
Mel Gibson's kind of a dick.
The point is, in fact,
no, I know.
In fact, you're probably not even going to get an opportunity. Okay, right? As far as those people are concerned that are trying to get these bills passed, or these land transfers are going to go through, right? When they bought their senator, right? They got their bills where I need you to bring this to the right. That was a down payment on those lands, as far as they're concerned. Right. They consider
it's not like they're going, we want, when they approach the senator, they're just saying, we want to sell off these lands. They're saying, we want to sell off these lands.
I need you to sell off this one and this one, right? As far as they're concerned, that's an unfulfilled order and product owed. Okay?
Okay.
Like, I need you people to think that you are not going to get a chance to buy your 40 acres. Like, you're just not.
Oh, that's so, Adam, this part, this is not a misconception that I was aware of, that people think, this is where I get my hunting estate.
It's mostly in like the eastern states, but I promise you folks, you are not going to get this parcel this year.
Yeah, but I've just never even heard anybody say that they thought they would.
Or if they, a local, like a rancher that's got like a grazing permit on there or something like that, he thinks he's going to get first dibs. You're going to get outbid. Like, I cannot.
Okay.
You're going to get out Ted Turner or whoever it is, another big landowner here, and he doesn't want your damn cows on his land. Okay?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to end up with it. I promise you that. Okay?
Okay.
So likewise, if you think these lands can be better managed at a state level and a state management is something desirable, I advise you to look at a state's budget, all right, and you pick any Western state and look up how much a bad year of fires costs the federal government for that state. Okay? Fire suppression alone would likely bankrupt a state in a dry year.
Oh, if they had to do the firefighting on the federal land.
On the federal lands, say the federal lands went to state management, state owned, and they had to do the firefighting for it instead of the U.S. Forest Service or BLM firefighters, that would bankrupt a state.
Oh.
And so, okay. All right. So, and make no mistake, these folks that want to do just state land transfers, they know this. Okay. There's no way that they don't. They've looked at those numbers and what it would cost, okay? So all of these Western states have state-owned land as well, right? And usually much smaller parcels than federal land, okay? And in many of their state constitutions, it's a requirement that if a state can't profit off the land they own, those school sections or whatever they are, they're required to sell it by law.
Okay.
Right?
They don't even have a choice.
They don't have a choice. It's in their constitution. We're losing money on this piece. And this fire drained us. We have to sell this land. Okay. Yeah. Right. So you're right back to square one of privatization, right? With just an extra step of state land transfer first.
Okay.
Okay. So
I've heard that for years, but you just articulated it more clearly than I've ever articulated.
Mm-hmm.
I've always heard that it was just a stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
Like going from federal to state is just a stepping stone for going from state.
They know they can't afford them.
Yeah.
They know they can't. Okay.
That's an interesting thing right there, because it's like just saying that the only way that society can afford federal land is with tax revenue from everyone. Okay.
Sure.
So, but I'm okay with that
because it benefits everyone. Right.
Yeah.
And don't let them lie to you that they all receive payment in lieu of taxes, right? Because the big argument is that we don't receive property taxes on all that land, right? They receive payment in lieu of taxes. These are PILT payments from the federal government for that land. They are compensated, folks. Like, don't let them tell you differently. So, okay. So,
yeah.
All right. Last but not least, okay. I need everyone listening to this to be more discerning over their respective political parties. Okay. So you don't owe them shit, right? They owe you. I cannot say that any clearer. It's a privilege to serve, okay? A letter next to a name shouldn't be enough to earn your vote, okay? It has to be more than that. You should expect results. Political parties shift their priorities all the time, depending on who's in charge, okay? So if you remain steadfast, but your party hasn't, it means your party has abandoned you, okay? So that's not to say that you need to vote in opposition to them, but it does mean you need to put the work in to get them back on track. Okay?
Yeah.
So a letter should not earn your vote. Okay? Their actions should earn your vote. How they vote should earn your vote. Okay?
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
So we've made a big point of, taking a lot of these nonprofits to task of things that we didn't appreciate, right? You got to do the same with your legislators, if you're listening to this, right?
Yeah.
A letter next to name is not the same, okay? You might be talking to he might be a Republican that doesn't own a gun and he's never hunted in his life, but he's a Republican. He wants small government, small taxes, so on and so on. Legitimate thing. Okay. Or you might be talking to a Democrat that has a shit ton of guns and hunts, but he also thinks about a robust social structure for taking care of people. But he's very much about letting people have guns and having access to lands. You need to look into those things.
Right.
Okay, it can't just be party.
That makes sense. Yeah.
You have to look into it.
Yeah.
Are they absolutely representing what you care about?
Yeah.
And if they're not, you gotta at least push them the other way.
Yeah.
So
yeah, or switch parties, whatever. Yeah.
Whatever it takes, be partyless. It's go to the issues.
Yeah.
But it's that letter next to their name means nothing.
No, what matters is do they represent which one represents your values the best.
And if it's hunting and fishing, hammer down on an access, hammer down on those things. Find out what they mean by it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's my spiel.
Oh, that was great, Adam. I got one last thing in closing. So as we move into this, we're ramping up for this fight that we don't know what shape it's going to take and what it's going to look like to sell off public lands. Who knows what it'll be? It could be just turn out to be chunks that are very close to a big city where they want to develop some housing, or it could be.
And then both parties have said that they've wanted to use some public lands for public housing. But if you look at some of that stuff, like public housing, there's
only a tiny fraction of public lands that are suitable for that.
Yeah, that is an entryway to type deal. And you know what? If you start thinking about a bunch of 2 to 10 acre ranchettes, spread across, however many square miles, that could be worse for wildlife and access than logging or oil or coal or whatever.
Yeah.
In North Dakota, the coal mine people, when they put something back, when the coal mine's exhausted and they put something back to land, it usually ends up as a wildlife management area afterwards, and they usually put it back better than what it was, and it's usually great habitat. Takes 40 years to get there, but these are things you need to consider. Once it becomes a neighborhood, it's always going to be a neighborhood,
right
here until the end of time.
Oh man, some of the coal mines I do research on have more wildlife than any place.
They do a great job, but it takes it's going to take decades. But something to consider.
So the reason I'm not going to give quarter to people that don't fight this, that have a voice, is because in the hunting space, what I mean is people that, in the hunting space that don't fight this, it's like you'd have to be pretty ignorant of how your bread is buttered to not fight federal land divestitures if you make your money in the hunting space, because as near as I could tell, based on some survey data, about half of the hunting that takes place in the U.S. is on public land. So who's going to buy your products that you're peddling if that goes away?
I can tell you, if I don't have public land to hunt on, I don't need shit for Sitka or for First Flight or anything. I can if I'm just hunting private land whitetails, I can sit in a set of Carhartts. Right. Like, I don't need all that crap.
But if the public land goes away, the private land is going to be out of reach in terms of cost for most of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of funny that a lot of these, a lot of hunting celebrities, the hunting industry, they kind of are on the right end of the spectrum. They're more conservative leaning, but they really are a major beneficiary of public expense.
Oh, absolutely. Like your brother with Meat Eater and, like Randy Newberg with his platform, they don't exist without public lands.
Right. even if they didn't hunt public lands, they wouldn't have customers to sell to if it wasn't.
Like, all that relies on public lands. So now, granted, especially Randy, he's been a great advocate for public lands.
Yeah.
I commend him for it.
Yeah.
You know, but like, and he's releasing podcasts right now, folks, talking about this type of thing. He brings that up. I advise you to go listen to him, because I think he did a 5-parter or something like that on just like that Wyoming corner crossing issue.
Okay.
Like he pays for having attorneys to like explain to him. Like he's a great source of information on that.
Yeah.
So commend him. But more
that and less of the hunting shows.
Like if we don't have that public lands, like that's their whole business thing is not feasible.
That's so interesting. So any of these guys that have sponsors or work for a brand or whatever, if they're not all over it, if they're not all over this issue, they need to be held to account.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's I think that's where we could play a tiny little role.
Yeah.
Although everything you just said is how the vast majority, that's how people need to be involved. Is taking the steps that you just laid out for us.
All right.
So you don't have to feel helpless, man. I'll tell you what, just like with the hunt quietly thing, even though we're not having a big impact or whatever, just doing something is good for your sanity. You know?
Yeah, it's at least you went down swinging.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go down meek and defeated.
Yeah.
If it ends up being the 300 Spartans last stand, I think, it's the Spartans that are celebrated, not the Persians. So, I mean, that's a matter of perspective, but so that's, fight like hell.
Go down swinging. That'll be the name of this episode. Thanks, Adam.